afternoon, everyone. Today I'll be talking about mass incarcerations. So, mass incarceration can be defined as a practice in which a country has a large portion of the population in prison compared to that of other countries. Mass incarceration has become a major issue in the United States. It, be- it began to become a problem after hurtful policies were enacted in hopes to lower crime. It is an issue caused by multiple socio-economical factors. Nothing good has come about from this practice, and the effect it is having can clearly be seen despite some acknowledging this is an issue. The figures. Mass incarceration first became a problem in the early 1960s to 1970s. This is a quote by Western in which he conducted a study in which he saw the prison rates from 1925 and 2006 and how they significantly increased. While we had 1.5 million people in prison in the United States, another 780,000 are in local jails, 800,000 are on parole, and 4.2 million are on probation. More than 7 million people are under some sort of criminal justice supervision in this country, a situation that's historically novel. So as we see on the right, we see the U.S. imprisonment rate from 1925 to 2006. We see that it was pretty steady, and then we saw a small spike in 1940, and then it went back down, and it was pretty steady until the 1960s to the 1980s period, where we saw a big significant increase. And this was primarily due to many policies that were enacted during that time, such as the three strikes rule and the war on drugs. We had the main causes in which are the causes of mass incarcerations. So first we have social factors. The wealth gap significantly increases the likelihood someone will be incarcerated. If they do not have the needs necessary to live a comfortable life, then they might become involved in crime to do so. This means that the economic conditions of a country has a big part to do so in the amount of people that will be in prison due to the crime they indulge themselves in order to reach that ends meet. Racial conditions also play a big role in America because they go hand in hand with wealth. Minorities are 10 times likely to be arrested for criminal behavior resulting from lack of opportunities. Mostly in America, the communities that suffer the most with wealth inequality are African American and Latino communities. Someone of color is also more likely to be put in prison or jail for low offense crimes for a very long time, while their Caucasian counterpart might get a less severe punishment. The criminal justice system fails when it comes to equality and sentencing, making social factors of race playing a big part in why there's such a big increase of African American and Latinos in prisons now, leading to mass incarcerations. Next, we have the hurtful policy of the target center group. So, as I talked before about the 1960s to the 1980s, of the two policies that saw an increase in mass incarcerations. First, we have the war on drugs, which was a policy enacted in 1970s, which saw a significant increase in inmates rates in America. It was aimed at preventing and stopping illegal drug distribution and use, but in the end, it had a negative return because we saw that instead of being used to stop drug use and distribution, they used it in order to target minorities who did such things, but the issue was never solved. The number of people locked up for U.S. drug law violations increased from roughly 50,000 in 1980 to almost 500,000 today. That's almost 10 times more greater after we saw those policies enacted. Out of those numbers, the majority were men of color. A white individual caught for the same violation had less likely chance of seeing prison time. We next have the three strikes rule, which also had a big role in the number increase. It increased the prison sentence of individuals who kept getting caught for violent crimes or serious felonies, although it was being used to convict minorities for longer periods of time for nonviolent crimes. This allowed the courts to sentence individuals to life sentences and made the correct system overflow rapidly. Last, we have one of the big major issues, which is the privatization of prisons. The issue of mass incarceration was becoming hard to handle both from a financial and administrative aspect. The government started giving contracts to private companies to house inmates. It was a bad idea because the companies that run such prisons did not model them in order to rehabilitate prisoners. Instead, they saw them as profits. This means that the longer they can keep prisoners, the better, because they will get more funding per prisoner. The funds, though, at many times do not get used to give the prisoners the basic necessities and are used to give benefits to CEO of such organizations. We have the negative effects that come in hand with mass incarcerations. So one of the biggest one is the effect it is having on certain communities in America. Mass incarceration affects almost everyone in America, but the most affected is the African American community and Latinos that see the highest rates of imprisonment. Imprisonment affects the children of people who are locked up and their family. It affects community infrastructure, the relations among people in the community, and the capacity of the community to be a good place to live, work, and raise children. And it affects how safe a community is to live in. Some of the effects occurring are damage to social networks and social relations that in turn affects family structure along with physical and mental health. This makes it easier for the cycle of imprisonment to continue. Community stability also is affected as people do not feel safe both from themselves and the police. We have the economic effect, which is hard to understand in America, but every little plays a role into how mass incarceration is having such a big effect in the economy. This is where it affects almost every American in some way because the money the government takes away in the form of taxes goes towards these prisons. This makes it difficult to solve the problem as there is very little people can do to stop it. It is easy for the government to then raise taxes in order to fund more things that in theory could already be funded if the government only did not spend so much of its resources on its prison, even though it is their fault that they need to do so in the first place. The United States spends more money on prison than it does on its education system and social welfare programs, and that's where it becomes an issue. The money also is not used to give prisoners the adequate care they need for the punishment to be humane and ethically correct, which in hand increase the effect of the economy. So we have overcrowding. The reason why this cost is so high, as I said before, is that taxpayers are the ones that deal with the issue because overcrowding in prison and jails are the perfect conditions for the issues that make the cost so high. Prison overcrowding threatens public safety and state budgets, and a 2006 study conducted by the state of Washington showed that while incarcerating violent offenders serves to protect public safety, the increased use of imprisonment for nonviolent offenders leads to negative returns. Negative returns are, for example, some of those public safety issues are issues such as disease like HIV to HIV to suicide and mental illness. The overcrowding makes it difficult for officers to enforce the rules, and many times this ends up in these issues end up in negative returns, meaning that since the prisons are not given adequate care in the first place, the prisoner will begin to induce issues such as health issues and mental illness, which then falls on the taxpayers that need to fund these programs in jail in order to give the adequate care. Excuse me. So we have two theories of crime that might play a big role in mass incarceration. The first one is conflict theory, which was proposed by Karl Marx and is focused on things that affect the stability of a community or a society. It can be either from lack of resources to deep rooted issues such as racism, poverty, income inequality, education, and disadvantages, which go in hand. On the first slides. I explain a lot of the social issues, and this is basically everything summed up in one. These issues, in theory, will be the main cause in why individuals indulge in criminal behavior in order to reach societal goals through illegitimate ways, increasing the number of prison inmates. The social conditions created by conflict theory will then allow for such issues as mass incarceration to become common. Then we have differential theory, which suggests that criminal behavior is learned and being associated with people who are criminals or indulge in such behavior makes it more likely that they might do the same. This is where having millions of men of color in prison become an issue that will only add to the problem. Those men have children and they can't models mean that the cycle of imprisonment will continue for the kids indulge in criminal behavior. Although, yes, some criminals deserve prison time, I believe that those who have had nonviolent crimes deserve to become part of their community and a family again in order to help those in the same path know the truth about what consequences of crime are. Finally, we got ethical concerns. Some of the main concerns is that the practice of mass incarceration is unethical because it separates family apart and it creates communities problems that will impact it more, making it more likely that some more people will become in prison. Also, you must think that you are basically taking the God-given freedom of an individual and doing this so in a way that makes it unfair and already predetermined and unethical. Any policies or practices that are unfair based on the color, race, or gender are wrong and must be acknowledged and changed. Lastly, it is important to note that if someone does lose their liberties, this does not mean that they lost the right. They are still human and deserve human punishment, and the basic necessities. In conclusion, there are many things that contribute to the mass incarceration issue, and it is hurting not only those who are in the system as prisoners by every American citizen. Both social factors and government factors contributed to the issue that the United States is dealing with today. An issue that came about from the need to want to fix problems has now turned into one of the worst problems in both economic and human rights issue. It has created tearing communities, families, and individuals who are suffering the repercussions of hurtful policy. This has led to a new range of social issues that is causing instability and pain in the United States. The only way to for a the only way to fix this is to reform the criminal justice system with the new regulations and scrap old hurtful policies that still may be in effect in order to ensure a fair and ethically correct system. That has been all for my presentation. Thank you for watching. I hope everyone has a great summer and congratulations on graduating.